Hi everyone, and welcome to the second live session. So this session is going to be on the revision techniques. Last time we went through how to create a revision timetable, and I had quite a lot of questions about how best to revise, which I said wait until today and we'll go through it now. Just like last week, I've got phone on as well, so I can see comments coming in. I've just been testing though, and it looks like there's actually about a 10-second delay this week. Last week, there was about 5 or 6 seconds, 10 seconds today. So just bear that in mind when you are putting in any comments. So just like last week, I'm going to start off just to get an idea of what brought everyone here and what they're hoping to get out of it. So into the chat, we'll start with just saying, let's turn my volume down. We'll start with just going through how you heard about the event, whether it was Instagram or it might be from my mailing list or TikTok, and what year group you are in. So those are the key things I'm just looking for now to see. Okay, so I've got email. Someone said they're here because they don't know how to revise. That's a good reason to be here because that's exactly what I'm going to be going through. Instagram and year 13. Okay, I'm going to keep letting some of those come through. And just have a looking at some of the other questions I had for all of you. Oh, that was the other one. Which exams are you preparing for? Now, based on year 13s, or some year 12s here as well, it might be mock exams. Oh, we've got a couple of people that heard about it from YouTube as well. So yeah, which exams are you preparing for? Is it mock exams? Do you have any actual exams coming up? Probably not at the moment. It would just be mock exams, I reckon. Someone says they just heard about it by pure luck. Okay, right. I'm going to start sharing my screen as well. Some of those things coming through, those answers coming through. Okay, so let's share this with you. Now, I did send through on the mailing list a copy of the workbook that links to this session, as well as the workbook from last week and the timetables, because some of you didn't have access to it because you joined after it had been sent. So I sent that through to you as well. Okay, so let's just have a look at giving an introduction as to what we're going to go through today. So we're going to start off with a revision quiz to see how effective is your revision at the moment. So that's what we're going to begin with. We're going to lead on from that to look at what's the difference between passive and active revision, how the brain makes long-term memories, and then the bit that everyone I'm sure is waiting for, the top 5 revision techniques that I recommend. Now, just as a reminder about the revision giveaway, I'm going to be giving away a full set of my A-level notes to someone who wins this, as well as a free place to all of my pick and mix sessions. So just in case you aren't familiar with my notes, I've got a screenshot here of a tiny section of it. The notes cover all of the theory for AQA biology. They include the key terms, a summary of the key points, all of the key marking points are in bold, and the essay links as well, because you have an essay in AQA. So there'll be a free set of those. But also there's a coupon on at the moment for 10% off. So 10 off notes, if you use that at the checkout, you'll get 10% off at the checkout. Now the pick and mix, this went live today. There's already only half of the spaces left. So 50% of all the spaces for all of the sessions went within the first 2 hours of this going live. So it's £7.50 a session, and you get a copy of a recording of the lesson. Each lesson's an hour long online, and it's focusing on exam technique. So that is on my website under in the tutoring option if you are interested in that. But if you want to see, first of all, you could try going for the giveaway and you'll get a free space at all of those sessions. So how do you enter then? These are all the options of how you can enter this giveaway. So post on your feed or your stories on Instagram of you working in the session. So just take a shot right now of you on Instagram or the screen. You do need to tag me so I can actually track your entry. And if you have a private account, you will need to send a direct message with a screenshot to me, because otherwise it won't tell me. I've also uploaded a post onto my Instagram today about this session. It's blue and it says revision techniques. Comment on there about what you find most helpful in this session, and that'll be an entry. And then once this session is ended, a recording of this will go onto my YouTube channel. And if you comment on that recording, again, what you found most useful, then that'll be worth 1 entry. So all of those for 1 entry. But now let's get into the quiz. So we're going to think, how effective is your revision currently, or your typical revision that you might do? So for each of these types of revision techniques, just say yes or no, and then total up how many blues did you say yes to, and how many yellows did you say yes to? And this is what the poll was for. There were 5 people that had already given me their answer to this. No idea how you managed to come up with an answer already, but there is a poll at the top where you can actually vote whether it's blue or yellow, or just type it into the chat box. So have a read through, yes or no for each one, and then add up and see, do you have more blue answers or yellow? Now, yes, there are more yellow options there, so you might be going for yellow, but just a general feel. Do you think you're saying yes more often to the blues or the yellows? I'm going to have a little look on the chat box just to see the answers coming in for this. So we've got some of the blues: reading the textbook, rewriting class notes, reading notes made in class, highlighting the textbook or notes, making new notes. Then we have flashcards, blurting, mind maps, graphic organisers, practice questions, full test, and reviewing the mark scheme. So let's have a look. Some of you are just telling me the main ones that you do. So we've got, someone's gone for mainly yellow, we've got 50-50 split. Yellow, again, someone else who said it's 5 of each. Someone mainly makes notes, it's split. Okay. So mainly then it looks like it's split or yellows. Now, the reason I've done this is these are actually color coded according to the particular type of revision technique they are. So mainly blue. All of those blue options for the revision techniques are passive. And what we mean by passive revision is it doesn't actually encourage your brain to make any long-term connections. You're not having to test yourself. You're not having to actively think. It's more passively reading over, taking in information, but you're not testing your knowledge. So that's why we call it passive. And those techniques don't actually help with your long-term memory. Some of those will help with your understanding in the first place. So I'm not saying don't ever read a textbook or ever highlight information, but those only help with the understanding. They do not help with long-term memory. So those should not be the main bulk of your revision. Now, the yellow ones are all what we call active revision or active recall. So active revision tests your memory and it encourages the creation of new connections, strengthens existing connections. By connections, we mean long-term memories. So overall, if you were to do more yellow revision techniques, then it's going to improve your long-term memory. Now, if you're not doing mainly yellow at the moment, then that's absolutely fine. All of this session, all of last session, it's absolutely zero judgment. It's a supportive workshop. And actually, last lesson, I don't know how many of you were actually here last week as well, but when I looked through the chat from last week, I couldn't believe how supportive everyone was. And it was so nice to see there wasn't a single negative comment towards anyone. You were all so positive, helping each other. So hopefully we'll get that same atmosphere again and just really help boost everyone. And if your revision at the moment, you're looking through thinking it's not actually that good, then that's fine. That's why you're here, to try and get some ideas. So that's what we mean by passive versus active revision. And all of the revision techniques I'm going to talk you through are active. Now, the reason to go for active, we briefly said, but I'm going to go through a few more as well. The next question is, how many total techniques do you use? And some of you have got a bit of an idea because you have said you did 5 of each, but have a think about when you do your revision, what do you mainly do? How many different types of revision are you doing? So it could be how many of those lists do you regularly do, or you might be doing things that aren't on that list. But we'll do that in the chat box. How many different revision techniques do you typically do when you're revising? Okay, and I'm just going to have a little look. So answers starting to come in. Okay, so it's good to see so far that no one does just one single type of revision. We've got some 3, seems to be the most common answer at the moment. We've got a couple of 2s, a couple of 4s, another 3. So the reason I bring this up is to get the best exam results, really, you should do more than 5 techniques before every test. And that does sound a lot, but the reason you should be doing more than 5 is each different revision technique is practicing a different skill set. And that then means it's going to be preparing for you for a whole range of different types of questions you could get on each different skill. So that is why really you should try and do 5 or more different techniques. And that's why I've got 5 on my list that I'm going to go through with you today. So you could try those 5 plus maybe some others that you do already. So having that combination of techniques means that you actually gain more benefits. And it's this side of revision that sometimes people aren't aware of. Revision isn't just about trying to remember all the information. It's about practicing the skills and being strategic, knowing how your brain actually works best, and then designing your revision around that. So let's have a look. I've seen a question there. I'll answer that in a minute. We'll just go through how your brain works first of all. And some of you might have seen this on my blog already, and one of my podcasts is going to be covering this. And I think I have a video on it as well. So I think I have a video on YouTube called Struggling to Remember Everything, something like that. And it covers this. So your brain has an amazing storage strength. And what that means is it can take in and store lots and lots of information. And that's because you have 86, now that should actually say billion, you have 86 billion neurons in your brain, not million, it's 86 billion. However, the downside is you can store lots of information, but the human brain has a terrible retrieval strength. And what that means is if you aren't constantly thinking about the information that's been put in your brain somewhere, then you can't retrieve it. Or in other words, you won't be able to remember it. So it's in there somewhere, but you just don't remember it because the connections to be able to locate that information have been lost. And I'm going into a bit of biology here. That's because all of these neurons, they're connected to other neurons. You've got lots and lots of relay neurons in the brain, and they're connected by the synapses, those gaps. This makes a whole network or a neural pathway. And to be able to remember a fact, you need to have your neural pathways all connected. And what happens if you stop revising or stop looking over, retrieving information? These neural pathways get severed. And that is so the neurons can then be used to make new memories. So if you've ever seen the film Inside Out, they have this system where they have those janitors that go through like dumping out all the old memories that haven't been thought of in ages, so those memory balls can be recycled to make new memories. That's actually based on the science. That is what happens when you go to sleep at night. Your brain is working through all of your neural pathways, and the pathways that you don't use very often or haven't used in ages will actually get severed, so those neurons can then be used to make new memories the next day. So if you want to be able to remember everything from your A-level course or GCSE course, you have to repeatedly revise it. Otherwise, your brain will think it's not important information because you haven't been thinking about it, and it will sever those pathways to be able to make new memories. So that is why I'm going to be going through a particular 5 revision techniques. So you can actually find out how you can make all these unconnected facts that have just gone into your brain into connected facts or in other words, knowledge, long-term memory, and you have all these neural pathways so you are able to remember everything that you have learned. So the bit that I'm sure everyone has been waiting for, the top 5 revision techniques that I recommend to improve your long-term memory. So I'm going to go through each one, but here is the list first of all. So flashcards, blurting, graphic organisers, text to image, and practice questions. And if you had seen the post that I put on Instagram, you would have seen that those were the 5 already, but I'm going to go through them. Before I do, I'm just going to temporarily stop to have a look back at some of the questions I had. I am going to leave time at the end for questions as well. So if you do have a question, you might want to wait until that point. Okay, so we have, is 2 weeks enough to study for a test? Now that completely depends on how much content you have to learn for the test. If it's your entire A level, then absolutely no way, that's not enough time to revise. Even if it's a mock where it's covering all of the year 12 content, then no, 2 weeks is definitely not long enough to revise. If it's an end of unit test where maybe it's based on the last half term of lessons, then yes, 2 weeks should be fine for an end of topic test. But for mocks, you should really be starting at least a month before your mocks. And for the final exams, it should probably be after your mocks, you're starting then. But it won't necessarily be lots of hours, but you should be starting at least once a week by February for your exams in the summer. How do we manage many subjects at once? Great question. That is what I covered last week. So if you have a look back at the live from last week, that's what I went through, how to make a revision timetable and how you can fit everything in. What is blurting? That's going to be coming up in about 5 minutes. So let's go to flashcards. How many people use flashcards? And if you do, how do you use flashcards? And by that, I mean, do you use paper copies? Do you use any of the apps? So Anki or Quizlet? How much writing do you put on your flashcards? Okay, so someone says, no, I don't use them. Someone uses Quizlet. Okay, so with flashcards, they are an amazing revision technique, but only if you create them correctly and use them correctly. If you don't use or make them correctly, then they are a terrible revision technique and a waste of your time. So I'm going to go through with you how you should make a flashcard so they are effective at improving your long-term memory. So first thing is, the cards should have questions and answers on them, or it could be a keyword and a definition. That's what you're aiming for on these flashcards. They should not have lots and lots of information on each card. If you do, that will just basically mean you've taken all of your class notes and crammed it onto a tiny card, which is pointless. You're not going to learn anything. The reason you only want to have a small amount per card is the point of a flashcard is to test what you already remember and what you don't remember. And if you have multiple things on one card, then you're not actually testing exactly what you do or don't remember. So you should always stick to just one question or one definition, because then you can really pinpoint which bits of the topic you are already remembering well and which bits you are not remembering well. So that's the first thing. Only have one thing that you're testing per card. Don't have lots and lots of information on them. You can also use images. So I've got an example here of a pack that I made. So cell surface membrane, and then I did a diagram on the other side. So you could then test yourself with the pictures. So you have your picture of the cell surface membrane, and you then have to guess the organelle. And maybe you'd want to write that as a little instruction, guess what this is showing. Now, how you use them is the Leitner system. That is the system that I recommend because it is the best way to improve your long-term memory and to test your understanding. Now, what we mean by the Leitner system is you need to have a pile where you'll put your cards that you got correct straight away, and a pile where either you didn't quite remember it properly or you couldn't remember it at all, and that goes in the try again pile. If you use Quizlet or Anki, those apps automatically do this for you. So they automatically work using the Leitner system. So this is if you have paper copies, this is how you would do it. So you go through your whole pack of cards. The cards that you easily remembered, leave there. And the ones that you struggled to remember in your try again pile, you then have to go through again and keep going through until every single card you can remember. But you need to make a note of which ones you struggle to remember, because you need to test yourself on those more frequently. So you don't need to go through the whole pack every single time. Because if you find there are some cards that you can answer straight away, you need to maximize the available time you have. So don't go through those as regularly, because you have tested and you already remember them. So still go through them, but nowhere near as regularly. The ones that you're struggling to remember are the ones you need to revisit more frequently. And the frequency of that depends on how far away your test is. If you have a test coming up in a week or two, then the frequency would be every day. If you have a test maybe in a month, then it might be every few days or every week. And then the ones that you could remember, it would be maybe double that time again. The next thing is shuffle the pack. So once you've gone through them, shuffle them so you're changing the order. And the reason for that, we can see this going through now, I'm just going to mute it though. The reason you should shuffle them is your brain will start to remember just the pattern, the order that the cards are in, rather than the biology. So shuffle it so your brain isn't actually just remembering that, oh yeah, after this card is this one and that's the answer, because you want to be testing, do you know the biology or whichever topic you're using this for? Not can you just remember the order of a pack of cards? So that's why you should shuffle your cards, because that will really, really strengthen those long-term memories. You should also, when you're shuffling them, turn them so they face different ways, because it's actually a lot easier to read a definition and guess the key word than if you were to do it the other way and you were shown the key word and you had to guess the definition. So shuffle your cards so your brain is tested both ways round on those examples. So before we go on to Blurting, I'm just going to check to see if I've had any questions linked to this. So people using paper copies, Quizlet and paper copies, using questions and answers already, that's good. Writing down the mark scheme answers for more vague questions. So that could be quite a good example, actually. There are some common questions that come up for topics, and you could just write down the common question and the bullet points that always come up in the mark scheme. So enzyme questions, for example, enzyme substrate complex always comes up as one of the marks. It could be about the tertiary structure and the bonding as well. So that's a good use of the flashcards. I feel like flashcards don't go in the detail you need for exam questions. That completely depends on what you're putting on your flashcard. The flashcards are there to test your knowledge. They don't improve application or skills. That's going to have to come up in a different revision strategy that we'll look at. But this is exactly why you need to do at least 5 types of revision technique so that you are testing and improving different skills. Flashcards are designed to improve your memory of the knowledge, not your exam technique. So you would never use flashcards only, but I do recommend that you use flashcards in the way we've gone through, because it's a great way to improve your memory of the theory. And you can't do application questions if you don't have any theory knowledge. So these are a good start point. Okay, number 2 is also to improve your knowledge, and it's an alternative to writing notes. Writing notes takes ages and it is passive. It does not test your memory. All it tests is, can you read, consolidate, and did you recognize information maybe? Writing notes can help you understand, but it will not improve your memory. So writing out notes over and over takes ages and it doesn't actually help. So don't do that. Instead, blurting is an alternative. So blurts are not neat. They're not pretty notes that you're going to keep to read through. The point of a blurt is to test what you already remember, and then you fill in the gaps. And this is a really quick and effective way at building neural pathways and improving your memory. So what you would do is pick a topic. So for example, I think the one that I go through here, I'm just going to mute it again, is DNA structure from year 12. So you'd set yourself that topic and then give yourself about 5 minutes, or if it's a bigger topic, 10 minutes, to write down and draw down everything you remember about that topic. And you can't use any notes, you can't use anything, because you are testing what you already remember. So don't use anything, don't do this in pairs. The whole point is to see what you personally can remember. So this was me demonstrating with this blurt, but I'm going to skip on to the next part now. The next step is you would go through what you couldn't remember in a bright coloured pen. And at this point, use your specification so you can see what you need to know, how much of that you had on your blurt, and whatever you forgot, you then write on in a bright colour pen. And this is where you might want to use your class notes or your textbooks to add on in the bright colour pen what you couldn't remember. So this is where it's like making notes, but it's far more effective, because to begin with, you tested your memory to see what you could remember. And the bits you didn't remember, you add in and you put it in a bright colour so it should stand out and be more easy to remember. Now, the essential part to blurting is you have to repeat it for the same topic at least 2 or 3 times, because the point is the more times you are testing to see what you remember, the more you will remember, because every time you're thinking about that fact, you are strengthening the neural pathway. So you're making that long-term memory. And again, how frequently you do that, it depends how far away your test is. The closer the test is, the more frequently you would be doing this. The further away it is, the less frequently then you would be doing that. So that is blurting. I'm just going to have a look to see if there were any questions to do with blurting. Okay, I've got one. Would you recommend throwing papers which you did blurting on, or keep them for comparison for knowledge? That's a really good question, Alina. I would say keep them, because you can do exactly what you just said. Do a comparison and see, did you remember more the second time, the third time, the fourth time? And if you did, then that should help boost your confidence that you are improving. If you didn't improve, then maybe you weren't doing the blurt frequently enough. So if you did look and saw that you remembered just as much or you remembered less, then choose that same topic and up the frequency, and then you can start to see improvements. Is this available to watch again after the stream finishes? Yes. So the live will then go on to my live uploads tab. It'll probably be tomorrow, or it might be later on tonight. So yeah, this will all be available tomorrow. Right, graphic organisers, number 3. Now this one helps to make connections. So it helps to strengthen the neural pathways, but this is also now starting to step into helping to improve your application skills, because this now isn't just testing what you remember, it's testing, can you make connections between topics or definitions or theory? And that is where we're now going to this deeper understanding of the theory and application. So one example I've got here, now there's lots of things you can do for graphic organisers. Basically, that just means it's a visual activity instead of making notes. This one here is where you would pick the key terms from one topic. Now, this is from topic, I think it's actually a mixture, topic 5 and topic 7 we have to do with ecology and populations. Pick one topic and just write the keywords around the outside. And what you have to do then is draw lines between key terms that have a connection. But you have to actually write on the line what the connection is. So I've got an example here for you. Population, I've drawn a connecting line to biotic factors. And that is because the population definition is all the individuals of a species in a particular area at the same time. So the connection I put in brackets, that is a living factor, and that's what biotic is. You can then see I've got a range of other connections here. So community and abiotic factors combine together to make an ecosystem. Abiotic factors affect the distribution of individuals, and that's something that you can monitor in sampling. Quadrats are used in sampling to estimate a population size, and so on. So that's one type of graphic organizer you can use. Just keywords on the outside, draw the line, but you have to say why there's a connection. And this will really help. If you do AQA, this will really help with your essay, starting to think holistically how everything links together, but also help with application skills, because you'll start to not only understand and remember the information, but see how things link. So that one I call connections. Venn diagrams. So this would be useful to be able to start to see similarities and differences, because some of the exam questions are compare or contrast. So Venn diagrams are really good at improving that exam skill. Mind maps there. Mind maps are good, but I actually prefer concept maps. Concept maps are a bit like these connection diagrams. And I've actually recently made a YouTube video on how to make a concept map. So have a look at that one to find out exactly how to make concept maps. But it's essentially a way to make a visual set of notes, but it tests you along the way that you understand. And it tests, can you apply your knowledge? Because you have to have your keywords, but group them according to similarities. Then you would have them in different maybe color boxes or shape boxes to demonstrate different properties. So those are really useful. Comparison tables, that's another great way. Instead of making traditional notes, you could do comparison tables. So for example, you can have a comparison table for optical microscopes and electron microscopes, or prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells, DNA, RNA. So instead of just writing out your notes, create comparison tables, because comparison questions are really, really common. Right, again, I'm just going to quickly have a look at any messages that have come in. Okay. Okay, so someone says they don't find flashcards useful. So if they're not useful for you, then yeah, try something else. If you've never used them following that technique, I do recommend that you use them or try them. And then if you still don't like it, and by don't like it, I mean you've tried it and you didn't find that it helped you improve for a test, not just I didn't enjoy doing it. Would you, I've answered that one already. Would this be essay practice? Oh, Olivia, I think you probably typed that before I answered, but yes, the connections would be a really good essay practice. You've done something similar to graphic organizers in a lesson, but I never really understood. Okay, good. I'm glad then that helped you to get an idea of different examples of graphic organizers to try. Would you then review the graphic organizer with your textbook to know the connections are correct? Yes. So you would need to double check it with your spec or your textbook to make sure it is correct. If you were doing this as a test, you might want to do this if you're doing it for the first time with your textbook or notes there. You won't be then testing that you remember the information, but you would still be testing, can you understand and make connections? So you could do this with your textbook or revision guide for that one. Okay, number 4, text to image. I don't really have a flashy name for this one. If anyone can think of a good name for this that's really catchy after I've gone through it, put it in the chat box, because text to image is like a very basic description of what it is, but it's not catchy like blurting is. So text to image, there's 2 ways around you could do this. One way is, in your textbook or your notes, you have big chunks of information, maybe describing a process. And as I said, just writing that out in notes doesn't improve your memory. And it doesn't really help you to better understand as a whole. So one thing that I sometimes set as homework for my students is, in advance of the lesson that they're going to be taught something, is to read the textbook, but don't make notes. Instead, I'll pick out a particular paragraph and I say, from that paragraph, turn it into a diagram. And in doing that, it's testing, did you really understand what you read? And you have to be able to understand it to convert it into a diagram. So the example that I did was I gave my students a paragraph describing glycolysis, and they had to use that description to then draw out the reaction. So this would then be the notes that they would create and bring to the lesson. So it's not your traditional notes, just copying something. They had to actively think and work it out. And on top of that, this counts as what we call multiple encoding. And it's been found that if you use multiple senses or different parts of the brain, it will improve these neural connections because you're triggering two different parts of the brain. And this is triggering the reading and written text, but also diagrams. So it's this two different bits of multiple encoding. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week, because someone said, would you recommend revising with music on? And I said no, because you're using the same part of your brain if you're reading and listening to music with lyrics. And this is this idea of multiple encoding. Okay, so that's text to image, but you can do it the other way round as well. So sometimes I might give my students the diagram and then say, look at that diagram and turn it into a descriptive paragraph. And it does the same thing. It tests, have they really understood what the diagram shows? And it gets you to think about it in detail so that you can then put it into writing. And I think I've done that for a range of things. I've done it for siRNA in topic 8, for glycolysis, for the Calvin cycle. So there's lots of quite visual processes that you could then give a diagram, or you can pick a diagram and put it into text, or do it the other way around. And that will really improve it. So let me just see if I've got any questions. And I just saw Olivia, I love that. That's great. Descriptograms. That's such a good name. That's way better than text to image or image to text. Descriptograms. Okay, we'll go with that unless we see anything else. But I think that's good. Have a go at descriptograms. That is the fourth one that you can go for. Okay, then the final one is practice questions, which probably goes without saying that everyone will be doing these already, and they know that you should do this. But what I'm just going to point out is different ways that you can use practice questions and when you should be using them. So one thing I'm just pointing out is practice questions don't necessarily mean the entire paper. One thing that you could do is this high frequency, low stake quizzes. And I think I saw someone earlier on said they use Seneca Learning. Seneca Learning is great for that. Seneca Learning has lots of multiple choice questions. So you could use those questions frequently. So that's the high frequency. Low stake means there's no dramatic consequence if you get something wrong. But if you just do lots of multiple choice questions, it's a great way to just test your memory and constantly have your brain thinking about those facts, so the neural pathways don't get severed. So Seneca Learning, that would be great for that. I'm sure there's lots of other sites that do it as well. On my Instagram stories as well, admittedly, I haven't done it much recently, but I do try and put on lots of multiple choice questions from random topics. So just while you're on social media, you're even quizzing yourself then. So at missestruch biology, and you can have a go at questions like that. Another example is topic-based, or it could be skill-based booklets. So again, not going on to the whole papers yet, but you might have had a go at your flashcards, your blurting, your descriptograms, or I've seen another one there, Rubus. Ooh, and I like the reason why. Rubus in Latin meaning not by words, but by things. Rubus puzzles use images to represent a word. Okay, that is amazing. I might have to do a vote on Instagram to see which one we prefer, because I love that as well. Okay, so back to, I got distracted there because that was an amazing idea as well. But as well as doing all of those different techniques to test your memory, you can then go on to questions. So what I have for free on my website, I'm sure lots of you have these already, but if you don't, there's the link. I have them grouped according to what is in the bundle. So I have the A-level math skills bundle. The A-level assessment bundle is topics 1 to 8, a booklet for each topic with loads of exam questions and the answers. I also have the skills assessment bundle, free as well, and that is booklets according to the type of skill the question assesses. So it's random topics, but there's one on application, there's one on long answer questions, there's one on critical analysis, there's some others as well. I think there's a comprehension one. But once you've been doing lots of practice of testing your knowledge, then start to go on to more formal question booklets like this. Don't jump straight into questions, because if you don't have the knowledge there, you won't be answering the questions very well. And therefore, it's going to be wasting your time. But also, it can be a really negative knock to your morale, because you then might think that you're no good and you can't do it. But really, you probably can. You've just done it in the wrong order. You need to improve your memory and understanding first, then start testing yourself with the actual exam questions and start to become familiar with the mark schemes. Then once you've done that, like topic-based questions, and physics and maths tutor have loads of topic-based questions as well, then go on to the entire paper. So this is what you would do right before your test. Don't do these too soon, because then you're going to be wasting the resource because you won't be ready for them. And when you do the entire paper, you might want to do maybe the first one, not in exam conditions. So if you get stuck, have a look at your notes and don't do it in time conditions. Then progress to don't use your notes, but not in timed conditions. And then progress to completely exam conditions, no notes, and sit down for the whole 2 hours and complete a paper. Because part of preparing for the exam is your time management, because 2 hours of doing an exam is tough. That is a long time of answering questions, and you need to practice so you get used to writing and really struggling and thinking for 2 whole hours and starting to learn the pace that you have to work through those questions. So definitely do that. And I think I saw someone earlier ask, where can you get like these complete past papers from? Again, physics and maths tutor do them, but the best thing to do is to go directly to your exam board, and they will always give you all of the exam past papers except for the most recent one. The most recent one is always locked, so schools can use them for mocks if they want to. But that means for now, every exam board has 2019 and previous available. And I do recommend that you do the AS papers as well as the A level. Even though the AS papers are quite a lot easier, start on those ones, and it's still good practice of timing, testing your knowledge, the types of questions that come up. The mark schemes are still the same, it's just different types of questions. So I'd recommend doing that as well. Okay, so that is my 5 top tips. Just a reminder about the revision giveaway, because this is going to close tonight. So I can then pick and reveal a winner for tomorrow. So if you did want to have the opportunity to win the full set of the notes and a free place at every single pick and mix that is being run, then to enter, you will need to either post on your Instagram stories or feed and tag me, comment on the post that is already there, what you found most helpful about today, comment on the video on YouTube once it goes up as well. And any of those will all count as one entry. And you can do it for last week as well if you didn't do that for last week. Okay, so questions then. Let me just have a look, see if I've missed any. And then I'll say probably about 15 minutes maybe to answer any questions linked to revision techniques. I won't go through any to do with biology theory, because this session is just to do with revision techniques. Okay. For AS exams, when should we start the past paper practice? Now, this would be the same for AS or A level, because your exams are at a very similar time. You will probably have mocks in January. So what I would recommend is that you do some before your January exams. at least 2 to 4 papers before your January exam for your mocks. So that would mean doing the papers towards the end of the Christmas holidays if you have your exam at the start of January. If you have your exam maybe towards the end of January, end of Christmas holidays, maybe the first couple of weeks of January, you would do those exam papers. For the actual summer exams, you probably want to start doing the entire past papers within the month before the exam, just so you have time to do all of them, because there are a lot out there to try. And as I said, start by doing it not in exam conditions, then without your notes, then fully exam conditions. Okay, so what order would you recommend doing the revision techniques in? Oh, interesting one. I would say start with flashcards and blurting, because those are testing your understanding and your memory. And that's like the basic skill that you need to have before you can get to those top grades. Because if you only have your understanding and memory, that gets you about a grade C or a D. But if you don't have that, you can't get any higher. Then go on to the ones that are more testing your connections, and that would be your text to image and your graphic organisers, and then go on to the past papers. Basically, the order that I've gone through them in is the order that you should do them. But you might want to still be doing flashcards or blurting as you're doing some of the more advanced ones as well. Okay, someone asked about Cornell notes, actually useful. That's going to be personal to you. I do have an Instagram post on Cornell notes. In terms of making notes, they are a pretty good technique, because you're not just writing out, you are having to pick out the key ideas, the key terms, summarizing it. So you aren't being passive when you're making your notes, because you do actually have to think. I'd recommend that though, for when you're in the lesson, if you're going to do Cornell note taking, or if you want to do a summary after the lesson. But I wouldn't use them as a revision technique. It's more a consolidation technique. How do I recommend you revise for the essays? I actually have quite a few resources on the essays that you might find helpful. I have a video on how to write the essay, and within that, I talk you through how to revise for it. I also did an Instagram live on how to do the essay. So that should be on my Instagram, where I mark someone's essay as well. Can we do exam papers from the older specs? If you run out of papers, yes, but you need to be really familiar with your specification so that you know which questions aren't on the spec anymore and you can skip over them. Okay, another one. If I revised for an hour for a subject, how many strategies would you recommend to do? Okay, it depends which ones you're going for. For an hour, you could probably go through your flashcards within 10 minutes if you've already made them. If you're making them, that's going to take a bit longer. You can do a blurt from start to finish in 20 minutes, and you can do maybe one concept map. So you could probably do all of that within an hour. If you're doing exam questions, then that would take a whole hour. So it depends which you're going for. Exam questions would just take up a whole hour. But if you're doing some of the earlier techniques, you could probably fit in one of each within that hour. Would you recommend self-revision for the whole AS level before mock? Should we go with the flow of the teachers, or finish the whole AS before Christmas? I think you must mean by that, if you haven't finished the spec, should you learn it first rather than wait until your teachers go through it? It depends whether you think you have the time to do that without burning out, without then making yourself too stressed, too tired before the exams. If you think you can manage it, then it would be useful, because then you've had more time to start to build those connections in your memory. But if it's going to be too challenging to fit that in, then just wait until you go through it. Does pre-reading help before content lessons? Absolutely. It really, really does. So flipped learning is something that I try and encourage. And flipped learning is when you would read ahead, or it could be watching one of my YouTube videos on the lesson. So if you do have a lesson list, we give that to our students, the lesson order, so they can then watch my YouTube video in advance or read the textbook in advance. Some of them actually come with notes already made. So then in the lesson, they better understand what's happening and they can ask questions which they might not have thought of unless they'd read it in advance. And it's better to then come with your questions rather than consolidate after the lesson and then realize you've got questions, but your teacher's not there to ask. It does take a lot of time. And if you've got homework and revision, then you might not have time for pre-reading always. But if it's just going to be watching a quick video or reading a couple of pages in the book, then I absolutely would recommend that. It will make you far more engaged in the lesson. On revision cards, would it be useful to put a long process such as mitosis on one card? No, so I don't think that would work well on a flashcard. Mitosis would be better to do as a blurt, and you could say, right, mitosis, I have to draw every stage and label it. That'd be far better on a blurt than a flashcard. Let me just see in case I missed any. There was one about uni questions, but I've just skipped over that because I don't think we'll have time to look at uni prep. Okay. Right, I don't see any other questions. So I'll give a very, very, very brief answer about uni prep. It depends what you are going to do at university, but there are loads of amazing videos on YouTube, not by me, but by other people. If you're going for medicine and you have an MMI, there's loads of MMI examples, and some of them are actually videos created by the universities. So I definitely recommend having a look at those videos where they go through mock interviews with you. I personally don't recommend paying for interview prep because there's so much for free on YouTube and other websites as well, which are amazing. And if your school offers free mock interviews, that's great. But when companies charge you for mock interviews, it's normally absolutely hundreds of pounds, and you can find it for free if you just do a tiny bit of research. Okay, I think that might be the end of the questions. Oh, I've got one more, so I'll just check that. If you do have any final questions, put them in, because if not, I'm going to end it after this one. If you have a topic assessment at the start of year 12, would you recommend doing practice questions or just stick with knowledge first? Still do practice questions before any test. You need to have done practice questions, even if you've only learned a small bit of the topic, because if you've never done practice questions, you don't know what to expect in the exam, and you won't know what are the common mark points, and you haven't tested yourself in that way yet. So even if it's only on biological molecules, still go and have a look. Physics and maths tutor Seneca Learning might have it by a particular topic, so you can then have a go at those questions. We use at my school as well PXS biology. It was a teacher that put on loads of topic-based questions. I think he might have changed the website though, and then turned it into not being free, but that's a good one as well. Okay, I think that is it then. So I really hope you found that helpful, and now use these two ideas together. The revision timetable, how to create it, how to split your time, how long to revise for. And now you would actually put in the exact topic and the exact revision technique into your revision timetable. So towards the start of your revision, you'd be putting in your flashcards and blurts, graphic organisers. Towards the end, it'd be starting to plan when you're going to do all of the question papers so that you do have time to cover them. So the more detailed your revision timetable, the more prepared you are that you're covering everything and all the skills. And as I said, you need to be doing at least 5 revision techniques. So you're testing a range of different skills. Try out all the ones today, see what you like, see what you don't. There was more than 5 on the list at the start, the ones in yellow that were active, but that's the main thing. Whatever you're doing for revision, it has to be active recall, testing yourself. Never just reading or writing, because you're just passive when you're doing that. Those are the things that you might do straight after a lesson or before a lesson to better understand, but not for the core bits of revision. Okay, so I will end it there. I hope you have found it helpful. This will be going live afterwards. So you can watch it again on my YouTube channel. So I will say goodbye and enjoy the rest of your weekend, what little bit we have left of it. Bye.